I'm David. I run a little company slash, I guess, private community called Gaming Insiders. And I've spent my whole career, most of my career as a game developer. I started Gaming Insiders a few years ago. We now have about 400 members, mostly founders and senior level executives at game companies. So we have about 400 members, as I say, mostly sort of CEOs. We really, about 75% developers, the rest is people from other parts of the ecosystem. And so we have a pretty active private email discussion list where our members talk about the industry, share information, kind of gossip sometimes, and just generally help each other out. And the organization basically exists to help entrepreneurial game developers become more successful. So we have this mailing list, and then we also host these very small invitation-only events from time to time, where people can just sort of get together in a pretty casual context. The reason that I wanted to do a fireside chat with Rob is Fifth Planet. So Rob is the CEO of Fifth Planet Games. They're really actually a super interesting company. We'll dig into exactly some details in a second, but they're a team that started with zero experience in the games industry and bootstrapped to the point where they have a 50-person, highly profitable, hardcore social gaming company. And so they did a lot of things that, frankly, most people who knew what they were doing told them shouldn't work, and turns out they did work. So what I want to do is just spend the next 20-30 minutes talking to Rob about some of the challenges that he faced and some of the key decisions that they made. And we'll also leave some time afterwards. So if you guys have specific questions you want to ask to an entrepreneur who's really accomplished some really interesting things and against some pretty interesting odds, we're going to definitely try and leave some time to do that. So I'm now going to sit down. We've got our fire going, which is excellent. So I guess I've given you kind of a little bit of introduction, but just tell me a little more. Who are you, and what do you do?
Yeah. My name is Rob Winkler. I am CEO of Fifth Planet Games. That's my title. What I do is, kind of a little bit of everything. When we started, I focused primarily on game design and business development. I still heavily involved in both of those things, actually more so game design now than anything else. That's kind of, not only is it a passion of mine, but it's how I feel my time is best spent, at the company.
Can you just give us a quick high-level background and the titles you have in the market, users, any revenue data you're comfortable sharing?
Sure. So we have 4 games in market right now. They're all kind of, I don't know what we want to call them, but they're core-focused RPGs and CCGs. We have Dawn of the Dragons, Legacy of Thousand Suns. They're both RPGs, and Clash of the Dragons and Legacy of Heroes are both CCG RPG games. So those are both all 4 of those games are currently on the web. They're on Facebook, Congregate, Armor Games, Newgrounds. They're just all over the place. And we are currently working on mobile right now. So we have our first game, fingers crossed, hopefully live in the next day or 2. Okay,
and you're about 50 people now, right?
Yes, correct.
So how does that break down?
So that's a way that we're a little bit different, I think, than a lot of companies out there, is that we have a really high community and support team. So there are, I think, 6 people that are directly just, their full-time responsibility is community and support. And then we have about another half dozen people that's at least part of their time is spent on that. At this point, I have a fraction of my time that's spent on that, but I'm still pretty active on our forums and in front of our community. And when we do things like player councils, I'm very involved in those. We have an internal art team that supports a couple of our games, and from there, it's a small team that handles business, and then most of that's tech. So we're about half of the team is some sort of engineering, broken up into different teams.
So. Tell me about you and your co-founders and what you were, because none of you guys had any experience in the games industry prior to, so you started the company in late 2009?
Yeah, 2009.
Okay, so what were you doing before that?
So It's kind of a funny story. So basically, it was a group of friends that we used to play a lot of MMOs together. So we played a lot of, actually a few of us met playing EverQuest. We ran hardcore raiding guilds in WoW. And a lot of what I've learned and some of the skills I've been successful with as CEO, I've learned from running a WoW guild and running raids there and trying to be able to manage people that way. It's been kind of fun. So we met playing these games. We had to kind of make a choice between staying married and playing the games, and chose to stay married and dial back the MMO playing a little bit. And we decided to just try and make a game ourselves. It's something we were always very passionate about. We always really enjoyed playing games. So we looked at the small skill set group that we had there, and our first project was a browser-based MMO. We knew we weren't going to kill WoW, but we wanted to at least make something that would be fun for people like us to play, when they couldn't play WoW, something to play at work. So we started looking at Flash and kind of started down that path. And really for the first 6 months or so, we're just in data collection mode. I was going to every conference I possibly could, trying to just learn as much about the industry. And this was summer to the end of 2009, and everything was just Facebook, Facebook, Facebook. That's where all the users were. You could put anything up and get 1 million users in a week. And so it was something we were resistant to. I mean, none of us even had Facebook accounts at the time. And once we did start looking there was nothing that we wanted to play. There's nothing that really spoke to us. The closest thing was probably something like Mafia Wars, but it was still pretty far from what we were used to. We got to the end of 2009 and kind of got to the point where we had a demo of the game that was made just from scratch. Just we always talk about how we just kind of make things up as we go in the company, and that was definitely like, we didn't have any industry experience to pull from, so we just kind of learned as we went. So we got to the end of 2009, the game wasn't going to go anywhere, and decided to
So hang on,
Facebook.
Just back up a second. So you spent about 6 months building a web-based RPG.
Yep.
So not Facebook at this point. You were going to just put it on the web and try and get users to it somehow.
That was basically the plan.
How did you identify? Did you release that game, or did you?
No.
Okay, so you did. What was it that made you realize? Okay, we've actually got to trash this thing and do something and do something else.
We got to the point that we had a playable demo and that no one wanted to see and no one was ever going to back. And we had at that point learned enough about the industry to like what it was really going to take to get it out and get people in front of it. It was just not cost effective, and it was really, really difficult. I mean, that was our baby. We had spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on it at that point.
So at that point, you didn't really know anyone in the industry, and you obviously went and you managed to get in front of a bunch of people. How did you approach, as people who, from a sort of networking perspective, didn't have a whole bunch to bring to the kind of people you were trying to get advice from? How did you get in front of those people and get and get them to help you?
I was very persistent. That's probably part of it. It was just something that I felt that once I could get somebody one-on-one, I could really talk to them about what we were doing and hopefully help them to understand what we were doing and just develop a relationship with them.
Okay, so you got in front of a bunch of people and they all told you this web-based thing you're doing is a stupid idea.
Yes, definitely.
And how did you then decide what to actually do next?
So we had heard so much about Facebook for so long and really found, beginning of 2010, a way that we could differentiate ourselves. So we learned a lot about Flash and decided that that's a way that we could kind of stand out in that kind of text RPG genre that Mafia Wars was part of, is that if we use Flash, we can put some animation in there, we can have music and sound effects, you could raise the bar a little bit on that, and it would be something that we could bite off and we could actually get out the door. Okay,
so then you worked on this new Facebook game for about 6 months before you released it, is that right?
It was about four months from actually the concept of the whiteboarding it out to putting it live.
Okay, so this is in 2010, where the quality bar on Facebook in terms of the level of polish was already starting to go up a fair bit, right? Guys like Zynga were putting a lot of money into these games at this point. How did you determine that launching with what you had, like how did you know when to turn that switch and go out and actually launch this thing?
That was a difficult decision. We have always just tried to follow our gut. I mean, we try to get data, we tried to get as much information as possible and make informed decisions, but it really just came down to what we felt was right. We also eventually got to the point where we're going to run out of money, so we just need to get out the door.
That makes it easier.
Yeah.
Okay, so you launched, it was Dawn of the Dragons?
Dawn was the first game.
Okay, so hardcore, super hardcore, PvP oriented.
It was actually more PvE. That was one of the things that we did differently too, is that just from playing games like WoW, we really wanted to focus on the cooperative aspect. We really wanted, the very first feature we ever put in was guilds, because that was why we played those games long past when they were fun, because of the social interactions and the friendships that we had built. So we really wanted to focus on the player versus environment stuff. So we had, there was a few key features that were absolutely necessary at launch, and one of them was raids. So it was something that I could do and get a couple hundred people to come and join me, and we try and kill this monster together before time ran out. And that was a very big focus. And that was, again, something where we were different. There were other smaller iterations of that, but we were the first ones to really go big with that and eventually do world raids that had tens of thousands of people in it and stuff.
So would you say that your sort of very early focus on player versus player interactions and community building kind of helped to, because you guys weren't going to win on content, right? You weren't going to be able to outproduce content. So would you say that was a key factor in helping you kind of carve out an early position?
Yeah, that was our interaction with the community in multiple ways was the key to our success early on, is that we really cared about our players. We really spent a lot of time talking to them. That helped with the iterative process that we do with design. We were doing 2 new builds a week at that point, which was a ton of new stuff. But it also bought us some love from the players, especially on Facebook up to that point. Developers really had not communicated with their player base, and so people that were interacting with us, it was a very different experience for them. And so they became very loyal to us and very helpful. And there was, we talk about a lot in the company, when was the moment that we knew that things were gonna be successful, when we were going to be able to do this for real. About 2 weeks in, we had the game basically unplayable for a weekend. It just lagged so bad, it was 10 minutes between clicks sometimes. And the fact that we were on all weekend updating the players, and they were still there and they were still spending money. It was kind of shocking that they would actually still spend even though they could barely play the game. But they were supporting us the way that we had supported them. And that's when we knew we just kind of had something special.
What was the biggest mistake that you made in that period?
In hindsight, there wasn't a lot we could have done about it, but I definitely wish we had gone in with more information, with more knowledge. I wish we would have dipped into user acquisition a little bit earlier. I mean, we had our budget for marketing for the first month was literally $20. That's all we could spare for marketing.
Let's back up then. So how did you build that initial base of users? Where did they come from? What kind of what did you do to get those initial people in the room?
It was complete guerrilla marketing. We just went
just guerrilla marketing. So meaning what exactly in this instance?
It was just really kind of grassroots. We just went. We didn't have any money to spend, so we spent a lot of our time just actually going on to some other games forums that, especially for instance, Zynga had just shut down a game called Dragon Wars the day before our game went live, and they just gave no notice. Just the next day, people logged in and the game wasn't there anymore. And so we went to their forums and talked to the players, said, hey, we have this game, that we think is kind of cool, check it out. And so they invited us into their own Facebook groups, and we actually spent a lot of time on other people's Facebook walls and Facebook groups talking about our game, answering their questions. And that we found that had really, really just amazing results in getting people into the game and made them, we created a lot of just advocates and evangelists on the very first few days and first weeks that really helped us grow. I mean, at the time, so this was about 2 months after Facebook had turned off notifications. We created the game with the anticipation that notifications were going to be there, and that got, that red got pulled out from under us pretty soon. So we got up to, I think it was something like 50,000 MAU in the first month, with basically spending nothing on acquisition, which was a pretty big deal for us because we didn't have any leverage from cross promotion or anything else. So it was just a lot of again, blood, sweat, and tears to go out there and try and get people to play the game.
So the company's grown quite a lot since. So the initial days, it was a handful of you basically working out of your bedrooms to get to market, and you're now about 50 people, right?
Right now, yes.
So what are, growth is obviously a good thing, but what are the biggest sort of challenges you've had to overcome moving from 5, 10 people to to 50 people?
The biggest thing, and that's really kind of affected us in the last year and a half as we continue to grow, is just identifying who we are and what we want to be, and that means a lot of different things. So culture is very, very important to us. We spend a lot of time really making sure that we're not growing too fast to the point where we're changing the environment that people respond to, and that's been very effective to us. But also just what is our path? Do we want to continue to make games and continue to iterate? Do we want to, there's always that kind of allure of, casino games are getting really big. Well, it'll be really easy to, make a casino game and make some money, but that's just not who we are, not what we identify with, and not something that we're passionate about. So it's just kind of sticking to what has made us successful and what we believe in, instead of just trying to, fast follow and do something else out there.
Let's talk a little bit about your approach to hiring, because you guys you're in Northern California, you're in Roseville, sorry.
Outside of Sacramento.
Right. So you're a little way out of the San Francisco, where everything's happening.
Yeah.
So is that an advantage or a disadvantage for you guys, and how do you deal with that?
We definitely try to use it to our advantage. There's some slight disadvantages to it. We are kind of a little bit off the beaten path outside of the craziness, which does serve us pretty well. With our hiring practice, though, we kind of handle that differently too. Is that we've always we have, I would say, of the 50 people, only a handful, maybe 5, have previous industry experience. And it's just some of the key hires in the last few years. So we're looking for a different type of person to join our team, someone that's very, very passionate about what they do.
So why? I mean, that's pretty extraordinary that you have, out of a 50-person team, only 5 of the people working at the company have prior games industry experience. Why? What do you have against games industry people?
Maybe I am actually a little bit slightly biased, but they come in with a different viewpoint on things. And that can be very helpful.
So expand on that a little bit. What's the difference between them and the majority, you guys, the majority of the people that comprises your team?
So a good example is there was a producer that we hired very early on that had a great resume, been in the industry a really long time, and had a little bit of work in social, but not a ton, more console and PC games, and just didn't get what we were trying to do and how we were trying to do it. Just especially didn't understand, and it wasn't through North Falls. He was a really nice guy, but just didn't understand how important community was and how important the iterative process that we go through and like the weekly updates. I mean, we pride ourselves on being very, very agile. And if we need to do something, we do it within minutes, and it's up within hours, and it's live. And we have significantly changed this game in some way. And so he honestly couldn't keep up with the pace, but didn't understand just the objectives. And so when we had to let him go, I kind of half-jokingly said to someone, we just should hire one of our players to do this. They get the game better than us at this point. And so there was one player in particular that had just kind of tried to break our game and had just kind of really understood it. So we ended up hiring him in the beginning of 2011, and now he's been with us ever since then, and he's just does an amazing job. He runs Dawn, and it's more successful now than it's ever been. And so we just we look to that and say, okay, he had a very, very deep passion for games. He understood what we were trying to do in almost every aspect of the word. We could teach him XMLs, we could teach him spreadsheets, we could teach him all the things that he needs to know to technically do his job, but we couldn't teach him, the kind of the culture and the other things to do his job.
So have you hired other people from your player base, or is he the only one so far?
I think we have, we're a little under I think we're like 8 or 10.
So 20% of your company has actually been recruited directly from your player base?
Yeah, it's a lot towards a community team that we get, we tend to find really good people for that. And they understand the way that people interact with our game, and so they've been really great. Again, that's another position that we can teach them how to file the support tickets and how to get them to tech and do all the other things, but these are people that we ask them, they're going to be working a lot of hours, they're going to be working a lot of off hours. We are open, we have to tell them at the very beginning, we're a service industry, we're not a product industry. So we are open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and especially our community managers are, our front line with that. So almost every single one of them is a past player.
Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about money. Okay. There's a lot of things to talk about, but you guys are completely bootstrapped at this point, right?
Correct.
But at this point, that's by choice. Have you had opportunities to tell me about the opportunities you've had in terms of fundraising and or your attempts to do so maybe before?
Yeah.
And let's talk about that.
So we were profitable within, I think, 2 weeks. We had made all of the money back that we had spent to make the game. And that was pretty crazy for us. We didn't spend a lot to make Dawn because we didn't have a lot to spend. It was a lot of our own time that was invested in it. And at that point, we decided that we really wanted to double down and just focus on making games and started working on the second game. Soon after that, we started getting a little bit of interest from people that were looking to pick us up while we were still small and still cheap. And it was just never a good fit. That was always the most important thing to us. But we've definitely been approached since. We've talked about taking on funding it is very interesting to try to accelerate growth, but we feel very strongly that the way we've done it is probably the most important thing, and we're hesitant to mess with that.
So I think one of the key questions that people have in the very early stages is should they try and raise money either from angels, or should they do a publishing deal to fund what they're doing? I mean, did that ever cross your minds, or do you think generally people should just wait until if they can, wait until they have something in market? You were very resistant to it. I'm just trying to figure out why.
I think I'm
probably
biased.
You had a family, right, too?
Yeah. So, that's kind of the personal side of the story that I don't talk about a lot. But yeah, my wife had to go back to work to make this stuff happen, and we had at the time 3 kids at home, and that was really hard. But we made a lot of personal sacrifices to get through this, and I wouldn't wish that upon anyone because it was really, really, really difficult. But at the end of the day, it was worth the sacrifice we had to make. We also didn't have the opportunities that are out there now. I mean, Kickstarters are interesting. There are some ups and downs with it right now, but that certainly would have been something that would have been very intriguing to us at the time. Again, in the position that we came in with, if someone without industry experience, very little industry experience, I think it would be very hard for them to raise any money right now. And I really think that if this is something that you're extremely passionate about, you're going to be able to find like-minded individuals, and you'll be able to get something out the door. There's so many portals now too. I mean, Congregate's a great example of you get a good game up there, they're going to support you, and everyone's going to make a lot of money, and it's going to be great. That there's an opportunity there. That Facebook was kind of like that, at least when virality was a little bit bigger. Now it's a little bit harder to kind of grow things very big. So again, my biased opinion is try and do it yourself.
So thinking back to that start point, is there anything or anyone that you wish you'd known, or anyone you wish you had known at that absolute beginning stage that would have made things materially easier for you as you were trying to do what you were doing?
I definitely wish we would have had more knowledge on the tech side. We ran into a lot of issues that, looking back now, were just simple mistakes that we just didn't understand how things worked. I think that's it. I mean, I do wish we had a better, user acquisition method in the beginning, but that's part of, I think, why our community loves us so much, is because we spent so much time just talking to them as a user acquisition method. And I think if we had more money to spend on advertising and things, we wouldn't have done that as much, and the relationship would be different. So it's hard to try to second guess, what got us here, because we're pretty happy with the results so far.
So you've found a pretty successful niche on the web, on Facebook. And you're now, for the first time, starting to develop products for mobile, which is a very, very different market. What scares you about going into it from where you've been so far?
I think the scariest thing for us right now is that a lot of the tricks that we've learned on web don't necessarily apply to mobile. Being very agile isn't super useful on mobile when you have to submit to Apple and wait a week for them to do something. I mean, we can't just fix our mistakes very quickly and then actually put them live. So we've had to kind of change some of the ways we're doing things and change some of the practices. The scale of mobile is somewhat daunting also. We have seen success on different platforms, especially, Kongregate's the example that we use a lot because, our games do very well there and they're bigger there than they are anywhere else in terms of user base. But the scale that we're, looking at in terms of possibly hitting on mobile is much bigger than anything we've seen before. So, there are some concerns with that, but I guess it's one of those good problems to have, hopefully.
What would you say has been the hardest lesson that you've learned in doing this so far? You're approaching, I guess, 3 years into it.
The hardest thing to learn and the hardest thing that I've had to do is just know when to kind of cut bait on something. And so
when to what, sorry?
Cut bait. When to
cut bait.
We haven't had to luckily do that in any of our games, but that was a really difficult decision when we had to switch from the browser-based MMO. We also, early on had to fire people that were really nice, but just it came down to we needed to be very efficient with our money, and we were always, only as strong as our weakest link, and that was always, always difficult. And we've gotten a lot better about our hiring practice since. But
how do you know? Because I think that's one thing. Anyone who's been an entrepreneur, especially when you have a smaller team, and if you're a nice guy and not like a sociopath, you don't enjoy hiring people. Firing people is fine. Firing people is hard.
Yeah.
And a very common mistake, speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs that I know, is holding on to people for too long.
Yep.
How did you go about? I guess it seems like you've been pretty. I would say ruthless is the wrong word, but you guys have a very, very positive, overall a very, very kind of positive, supportive, people. You guys are very much not. Probably shouldn't say not Zynga, but not Zynga. But you've had to be very, but you've also made those tough decisions. So how do you know, how quickly do you make that decision, and what are your criteria for knowing when the fit is not right?
Every situation is a little bit different. Generally, it's, we just personally, look to make sure people aren't making the same mistake twice. Especially in the environment that we're putting them into, a lot of times we're throwing them in the deep end. Yeah. And if we have people that are learning from the mistakes, that's okay if they make mistakes. I mean, we all do that somewhat frequently, unfortunately. That's the path that we've been blazing, and so that's a big thing. We do put a lot of weight behind culture. I mean, are they getting along with people? Are they promoting a positive work environment? I think that can sometimes get overlooked for a superstar that really is doing a good job, but if they're not, making other people better at their job, we use a ton of analogies to team sports in the office, and it really is, the team has to gel, everyone has to work together well for everything to be at top efficiency, and if they're not contributing to that, then that's
So people pay a lot of lip service to culture. I think a lot of the time, everyone talks about it's really important to have a great culture. It's just like one of those things that obviously it's better to have a good culture than a bad culture. No one goes on stage and says they want to have a bad culture. But what does it actually mean in practice in terms of the things that you do? How do you know that you have a good culture?
The things that I'm very proud of our games, and I'm very proud of a lot of the stuff that we've done, but some of the things I'm very most proud of are just seeing the people that we bring into the company, just spending a lot of their free time with other people in the office. That's just, like literally sometimes it brings a tear to my eye to see like 10 of them just go out to dinner and have a good time, post the pictures on Facebook, and they run D&D campaigns together on the weekends, and we have a game night and everybody shows up, or we have some other event and everybody comes. It's just really kind of a great feeling, and I've definitely at this point built a reputation within the company of just getting up in front of these groups and just like kind of crying and talking about how much I love everybody, because I truly mean it, because we have such an amazing supportive team. And we work really hard at it, and honestly we spend a lot of money on culture. Is that we have team building exercises every month that are pretty expensive. We run magic leagues and stuff that really promotes people interacting with other people they might not normally people on tech versus community. We'll actually get to play each other in a match every so often, and that stuff is just It's just so key to the way that we want to run our business. And it's not the most profitable way in the entire world. I'm sure we could, save some money and be more profitable than we are, but this is the right way for us to do it.
Cool. So I don't want to be the only person asking the questions. So I want to at least ask the audience. So Rob, to me, what he's achieved is pretty impressive. They boot from having basically no experience in the industry, bootstrapped to about 50 people. They're the top game on Congregate in terms of revenue.
I don't know if that's.
Forget everything you just heard.
It's the top of the most popular for sure.
Okay, so it's pretty impressive achievement, and you've had a hand in most sort of aspects of it at this point. So, anyone out there want to ask any questions about funding, hiring, product development, game design, anything else? Magic Leagues.
Magic Leagues, yes.
Now is your opportunity to do so. Anybody questions?
So it sounds like you're running a really successful, awesome lifestyle business. Do you have dreams to take it further than that, or is that where you want to be?
I think so. I think we want to continue to grow. We've been pretty aggressive with that. Beyond that, honestly, I don't know. I mean, we just kind of take it not quite one day at a time, but when we talk about planning out more than a few months or a few years, it's kind of gets a little laugh out of us. We love making games, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day. So that's what we're going to continue to do.
Any other questions for Rob?
Hello. How many people are actually paying in your game? Like Kabang is speaking about 15%. How many people are paying?
It varies by the game. They're all our core games, so they're all pretty, on the high end. And it varies by platform also. I would say across the board, on average, probably over 20%. I mean, we have, Dawn on Facebook, for example, that's, much, much higher than that because the game's been around a long time. So it's pretty good.
Hey Rob, you're just about to release on mobile. I was wondering what the biggest challenges were moving from the Facebook world to mobile.
That's a great question. The biggest challenge so far, again, not having it be live yet, was picking a technology and what we wanted to do. There was a lot of options out there. We, at the end of the day, ended up going with Adobe Air just because Dawn was originally written in Flash, and we wanted to continue to update it along with the updates that we were already doing. In hindsight, that was still the right decision, but we don't have any plans to use that technology again in the future. So that's like the big challenge for us now. I'm sure just keeping the game up in a week is going to be a whole new challenge, so we'll see.
If you look at the new games you're developing, are you mainly going to the same target group and extending that? Big Point was talking about that and making sure that when they get bored from the old game, they have a new game. Or are you looking to expand your audience in terms of different, new demographics?
It's a great question. We talk about that a lot in the company is what do we want to do next? And it always comes down to what we're most passionate about. We're not going to try and target a certain demographic or a certain type of game. We're going to stick to core because that's what we've always really enjoyed. We really like CCGs. That's why we've made a couple of them so far. And RPGs, things like that. I mean, we want to start making, different types of games in the genre. Like really, I'm personally very passionate about making like a side-scroller RPG. And I don't know if that'll actually happen, but it's something that I just kind of personally want to do. There's tons of great genres within core that we're going to tap into, but we're going to stick to kind of what's always worked for us because it's something that we would want to play.
So you had mentioned earlier on that you had a $20 marketing budget, and then you mentioned a whole bunch of things that you did that were free.
Yep.
I'm curious what you spent the $20 on.
So it was all Facebook ads at the time, and it was just trying to learn the platform. I mean, we were just since day one, we've just been trying to learn as much about the industry that we're in. And that's been very, very valuable to us over the time. Because again, not coming in with any kind of industry experience before, we just didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. And so we learned very quickly kind of how Facebook ads work, and we were able to leverage that. We actually had a lot of success, you know, the 3 to 6 month period when we started actually making money and able to reinvest it back into the game.
If you don't mind my asking, what percentage of your revenue do you reinvest in customer acquisition?
At this point, very, very little. So that's one of the things that we've done over the last year is take on a slightly different strategy. So we've been more focused on new platforms. So you know, places like Congregate, Armor Games, Newgrounds, they handle the user acquisition for us, and we just make sure that our games monetize well, so they want to keep promoting us. We spend almost, I mean, last year it was honestly probably less than 1% of our total expenses was user acquisition.
Any other questions from the audience? Dave, did you want to ask some more? What? Oh, I thought somebody over here said, "Hey."
And I just want to thank Rob for coming here and being so open about what you've been doing. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks to you both.